book lovers, it is G Swizz here, and I'm here today to talk about some books that some friends recommended that I'm gonna be reading in 2022. If you've been in the book community as of recently, you might have noticed this 12 challenge, where for 12 months you have to read 12 books recommended by 12 friends. It's been going around. Not everyone's doing a video on it. I decided as soon as I saw it, I wanted to do a video on it and share my TBR for the year based on this 12 challenge. I decided I wanted to participate. It's very funny because I usually try not to let anyone else dictate my TBR. Because there are so many readathons that technically do, you know, with group books, I don't tend to join readathons that often for that reason. Also, I used to do a TBR jar challenge, which I would pick a challenge out of per month, and I realized that I wasn't really enjoying it as much. I'm not a big fan of prompts, but I am a mood reader. However, this challenge kind of intrigued me because sometimes you have friends who know your best interests and they do know what you would like in terms of fiction or in terms of genre, and then there are some friends that really want you to read things based on what they've liked, and so that's how I can understand why some of my friends would recommend certain books to me, whether they are books that I was immediately interested in or books that I probably haven't heard of or I've heard of but I've been like steering clear from. I wanted to challenge myself this year. I decided, you know what, new year, new me. I know I'm a mood reader, but I'm gonna give this a shot. I have 12 books recommended by 12 friends. I'm gonna kind of give you an overview as to how I feel about these books, also what I know about these books, what I don't know about these books yet. Am I excited for them and am I nervous about them? Am I intimidated by them? You'll get all of those answers today. Everybody who made the list either personally DM'd me, so they're either like a personal friend of mine because I did invite some personal friends to also participate. I got some tweets or Twitter DMs as well, and I also received some Instagram DMs because I shared this on my Instagram story. So you get a range of people here today. Whoever does have a booktube channel, however, I will link down in the description where you can check him out. The first one that was recommended to me was recommended by Abby. The funny thing was I purchased this book within the week of them recommending it to me, and thankfully I did because they highly recommend this book, as well as a bunch of my other friends. So many of my other friends recommend this one book to me. I didn't pick it up until I saw that it was on sale. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give it a go. I also did specify in the tweet that I'm willing to have some contemporary adult romances as well. So Abby recommended me Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This one is very fascinating. So what I do know about this is technically the main premise. I don't know if it's a hate to love romance, but there's tension between the two main characters because one of them is, I think he's the Prince of England, not too sure. He's a part of the royal family, and then the other love interest is the son of the President of the United States, which is fascinating. I actually did start chapter 1 yesterday. I don't know whether I'm going to continue on with it in January, but I do want to continue on with it soon. It was pretty fascinating with all the presidential references because I believe the first chapter follows the United States of America protagonist. I wouldn't see myself reading this if I was planning to read this 2 years ago because I was so into fantasy romance at that time, and I still very much am. Like, that's still my go-to genre or my go-to category. I feel like I've gotten to an age where I'm finally starting to accept contemporary novels. I think because as much as I do want to escape, there's also some part of me that is fine with being grounded in reality now. I'm happy with this recommendation, and I'm also happy that Abby went to my Goodreads and saw that I put it as one to read that week. So thank you, Abby, for recommending Red, White, and Royal Blue. I'm looking forward to this one. The next recommendation I received was from Maddie from The Book Pusher, who is one of my favorite booktubers. I mean, I do consider them a friend, but at the very same time, I'm a huge fan of them. So I was kind of honored to receive a recommendation. The first recommendation I received was Gideon the Ninth. I believe around 6 months ago, I read Gideon the Ninth. I did enjoy it. I think I was in the wrong place to read it because I was expecting a fantasy, but it was more like a sci-fi. But I really love the concept, and I love Gideon, and I especially love Harrow. Because I've already read Gideon the Ninth, I thought to myself, maybe I could choose Harrow the Ninth, but they recommended another book as well. They said, if that's not your thing, then read The Tethered Mage by Melissa Caruso. I mean, Gideon the Ninth I did enjoy. I mean, it's not that it's not my thing, but The Tethered Mage I have not yet read. I do like that I do have an adult fantasy on here because I am a little bit hesitant when it comes to adult fantasy now. I think it's because of the intimidation that it comes with. So like I really struggled with the Mistborn saga, which funnily enough I just bought the new covers for Boxing Day. That's what it's good for, because I do want to give it a second chance in the future. I haven't read too many other adult fantasies. I think it's because of how much I remembered the struggle of reading the Mistborn saga, and that's the reason why I haven't yet read the Stormlight Archives. I do want to read a bunch of adult fantasy, but I need to start somewhere again, and I feel like maybe the Tethered Mage might just help me, and maybe, just maybe, I'll get back into a bunch of other adult fantasies that are recommended, because I love watching a bunch of adult fantasy YouTubers. There's some really good ones. Maddie is a good example of this. I like watching Holly Neese as well. I like watching Daniel Green. Yes, Daniel Green. I love watching him. I love watching them. They're great YouTubers who recommend some really rich fantasy books. However, I really need to actually read them. I still do watch a bunch of adult fantasy YouTubers, but I'm intimidated to read adult fantasy. There's so much irony, I know. The next book that was recommended to me was Sea Fire by Natalie C. Parker. This was recommended to me on Instagram. I remember first hearing about this book years ago, and I feel like there was a big sea craze. There was Daughter of the Pirate King, there was To Kill a Kingdom, there was Sea Fire, all these different books, and I read a few of them, but I didn't read all of them at the time. So Sea Fire, I believe, came out close to Kill a Kingdom, or there was another book that it was overshadowed by. Like there were two sea books that were coming out at a similar time. I just knew that I was reading one over Sea Fire, and I didn't read Sea Fire because it was really hard to care when there were too many that kind of seemed similar that were all sea reads. And I don't mind sea reads now. Like I do like them, just not all the time. I like reading them sparingly. I love it when my reading life has a bit of range. I believe that Sea Fire is probably really underrated, because I know the people who've read the entire trilogy really love the trilogy. Not one of those people, because I haven't really gotten into it. So I believe this year, being that it was finally recommended to me, I finally will have some motivation to pick up Sea Fire and to see what I missed out on in 2017 when it first came out. Another Instagram recommendation I got was For the Wolf by Hannah Witten. This book came out last year, and I heard a lot of great things about it, even though I technically slept on it. Like I really did sleep on it. So many people were raving about it, and I was thinking, I don't know if I'm interested in it or not. I also recently read The Bear and the Nightingale, and for some reason the cover gives me those vibes. I actually don't know anything about this book. However, I feel like I'm going to love it based on the hype. It kind of looks a bit more whimsical, more classical, young adult, and I kind of feel like it's going to hold up just like The Bear and the Nightingale holds up. I don't see anyone compare the two, but I'm just getting the vibes. I'm just making assumptions based on the cover. This next book, it was recommended to me, but it was more just like picked at random. My sister came over last week. I couldn't fill my board up at the time, and for some reason a bunch of recommendations came in last minute, but I felt like I wasn't getting enough recommendations. So my sister was here, and I said, just point at a random book on the shelf, and that's your recommendation to me, if you would want to. And she decided to point at One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I have two Casey McQuiston books on this list, and I'm actually really happy about it, because One Last Stop, I think, was the one I wanted to read more. I really like the premise, or I really like the idea of One Last Stop. Even though Red, White, and Royal Blue does seem very fascinating based on the first chapter, I think I was really drawn to the concept of One Last Stop more, because it has this weird mysterious element to it where one of the main characters is stuck on a train, I think since the 70s or something like that, and they haven't been able to leave the train. That is how the other main character meets this character, and that's how they start forming a romance, and that's very fascinating. I don't know why. For some reason I've been more intrigued in that premise than I have with Red, White, and Royal Blue. I think that's what's actually pushed me to want to read Casey McQuiston's books a little bit more. I'm not saying that Red, White, and Royal Blue I'm not interested in, because I definitely am, but I think One Last Stop's premise was definitely what intrigued me more. I'm very much looking forward to reading this book, even though this wasn't actually a direct recommendation. This was more just my sister pointing at a book on the shelf and saying, okay, read that one. What more could I want, really? It's funny because they actually originally pointed to Throne of Glass, but I've already read Throne of Glass, so I said, no, just pick a book at random. And book number 6 on the list was recommended by Camilo, and he ended up recommending the first volume of the manga of Monster. I was very much looking forward to reading this one for a very long time. The reason why I haven't yet is because due to supply chain issues, it's actually really difficult to get myself a copy at the moment. So I'm just waiting for stock to come back in to get a copy of the first volume of Monster. But I am very much intrigued in this premise, because what I've heard about Monster is that it's pretty much like Death Note, but without the mystical element, the paranormal element. But it's more of a dark mystery manga, and it's a seinen. I do like like more mature manga. Even though I am enjoying some shonen, I do like manga that is not afraid to be too dark. I know some of you guys might be thinking, why don't you read Junji Ito? No, that's probably too scary for me. It might have some action, who knows? I don't know too much about it, but what I do know is that it's recommended for those who enjoyed the Death Note saga, and I just recently read the Death Note saga. So when I'm in the mood to read something like that again, and when supply chain issues have less issues, I don't know, I definitely am looking forward to reading Monster. I was recommended this book by Neeks. Her channel's down in the description. I love her videos. So honored actually that I was recommended a book by her. She recommended me The Charm Offensive, and I'm so excited to read this one because my workplace publishes this book. My work colleagues have been raving about The Charm Offensive non-stop. They're like, oh my god, it's so good, you need to read it. And being that I have not been into contemporary romance as much as they have, I feel like I have been missing out. Yeah, I think it's the peer pressure as well that I'm experiencing when it comes to contemporary romance. The Charm Offensive, I don't actually know too much about, but what I do know is that everybody I know who has read it loves it, and they say that it's probably something that I would absolutely love because I love romance. I'm very much looking forward to reading The Charm Offensive, and I'm really happy that I was recommended it because it just gives me the extra push to finally finalize that I'm gonna read The Charm Offensive. And then a good old friend, Jules, DM'd me and recommended Chainsaw Man to me. Jules is amazing. I miss them. Oh my goodness. I was like so excited to see them DM me because it's been probably years since we chatted. I really appreciated the reconnection, Jules. Thank you so much. I've wanted to read Chainsaw Man for a while. We do have volume 1 on our shelf. The problem is it's really difficult to get the rest of the series because once again, supply chain issues. Manga companies in particular are currently trying to reprint a bunch of series that are currently on demand because manga is on a rise at the moment. It's gonna take a while, especially because the supply chain. I mean, there's the supply chain with the paper itself, and then there's the supply chain with mailing out the books to different countries. The rest of the Chainsaw Man series is almost impossible to get in bookstores at the moment, so I'm patiently waiting, but what I do know is that I have Chainsaw Man Volume 1 on my shelf, thanks to Camilo. So I plan to read it this year, and I'm very much looking forward to not only reading it, but checking out the anime that's coming out. And then Paco, who is also here on BookTube, recommended Iron Widow to me, and I'm so happy that they recommended Iron Widow because ironically, I purchased it a few days before he gave this recommendation. I've wanted to read Iron Widow for a while. I started watching the author's YouTube channel when they posted their first video about Mulan. I was fascinated in what they had to say, and I was so happy to find out through them starting a YouTube channel that they were publishing a young adult book. I ended up purchasing this on Boxing Day. Absolutely pretty. It has been compared to Neon Genesis Evangelion, but it's Neon Genesis Evangelion meets Chinese history. I'm very much excited for it because I look at the idea of mechs and I think that I'm not interested, and then when all of a sudden I think about Neon Genesis Evangelion, nothing compares to it. Code Geass is probably the same as well, but Neon Genesis Evangelion is one of my favorite anime series of all time. So I think I will love the Iron Widow. Third last recommendation I received from a friend, and that is Heartstopper Volume 1 by Alice Oseman. Once again, I had just purchased Heartstopper, but around a week before I asked for recommendations because I had a few more to fill. I feel like a bunch of people were paying attention to the books that I just bought and I was sharing that I bought. Heartstopper, I didn't originally want to read because once again, it was kind of like contemporary-esque. However, I feel like I would really resonate with it, especially because I relate to one of the protagonists based on the premise of the 4th volume. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how this series is gonna go and if I will enjoy it. As I mentioned, I'm only just getting back into contemporary, and this is technically a young adult contemporary, but it's a graphic novel. Second last recommendation was recommended by a friend, and they recommended The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I'm so excited to read this, and I think that this was recommended to me because it has demisexual representation, and I have been like on the edge of reading it, but at the very same time, I've mentioned that when it comes to contemporary-esque novels, I've been more reading fantasy. However, The Love Hypothesis is one I think that I've just wanted to read ever since I found out about the representation. Also, it's an awkward love story where the cover explains it all. A girl just kisses the professor and has a fake relationship with the professor. I mean, this one is kind of random, and it's not really a draw for me because I'm not a Star Wars fan whatsoever. However, it's Reylo fan fiction. I don't know how that would work in a contemporary. Regardless, I'm mostly here for the demisexual representation because apparently the professor is demisexual. I could be wrong, it could be another character, but I would just like to see that in fiction, you know? And the final recommendation I was given, so everybody has been recommending this graphic novel to me. I'm really happy that the final recommendation I received was Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. This time it was recommended by my friend Ash, and I'm so so excited because I've talked about the fact that I'm Hades and Persephone trash. I will read any of the retellings of Hades and Persephone and really enjoy it. I feel like 2021, I've just finally embraced that that's probably one of my favorite myths to be retold. So Lore Olympus, I don't know if it just retells the Hades and Persephone myth. I'm pretty sure that it follows like all sorts of Greek mythology, but Hades and Persephone are the main two characters. And I really love the art style throughout the series. I go on Instagram and some people post like panels, or some people post their own fan art based on the art style. I'm in love with it. I really am. I'm very much looking forward to reading the series. I've known about the series for years, and I finally got my hands on a physical copy of Volume 1. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm really happy that this ended up being one of the books that was recommended to me. Thank you everyone for recommending such great books. I am very much looking forward to sharing my thoughts throughout the year. If you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social medias. I'm at GSwizzleBooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also at Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/GSwizzle. And finally, I'm at TikTok. I'm at GSwizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.
Started out with half and I flipped it in a double. Started out with half and I flipped it in a double.